So this one goes out to our hardcore Native American warriors and the United States Cavalry. Now, considering the story you're about to hear involves the massacre of the 7th U.S. Cavalry, you might think that it's a bit weird. Still, as we find out, Little Bighorn had a massive impact on the traditions of United States Cavalry that live on to this very day. Ladies and gents, this is the story of Crazy Horse at Little Bighorn. Crazy Horse was born into a Lakota Sioux tribe. He went on a raiding party and stole horses from a rival Crow Indian tribe at age 13, led his first war party at 18, and eventually grew to become the war leader of his entire tribe. He was so awesome that his baby banner was so desirable that his friend's wife divorced him and married Crazy Horse. The dude got super pissed and shot Crazy Horse in the face, but this only gave him a gnarly looking facial scar, making women want his meat club eating their guts even more. His people respected his fighting abilities and honored him as a hero. And he was only in his 20s at this point. So maybe get your shit together, America. It was around this time that the federal government was starting to mess with the Native Americans big time. The Sioux had allowed pioneers to travel freely through the Oregon Trail, which ran through the Sioux lands, and were living in relative peace with the Americans. Then one day, some jackass Army lieutenant showed up at Crazy Horse's home, claiming that the Sioux had killed a cow that belonged to a pioneer and that someone was going to have to go to jail for it. Crazy Horse's chief, Conquering Bear, tried negotiating with the lieutenant. Conquering Bear received a fatal gunshot. I guess those negotiations didn't go too well. Having witnessed the treachery and intolerance of the federal soldiers firsthand, Crazy Horse decided to stand up for his people and defend the homeland against these dangerous invaders. Crazy Horse participated in the assault of Fort Kearny in 1866, dubbed the Fetterman Massacre, when he attacked the base camp of Colonel William Fetterman. The preemptive strike on this fort resulted in the near complete destruction of Fetterman's troops, and at the same time was the biggest defeat of the United States Army at the hands of the Native Indians, a record that Crazy Horse would go on to break soon. The Army decided they needed to deal with this insubordination, so they sent out 3 Dick Stink Army columns to go around burning Indian villages, relocating any survivors back to the tiny scrap of land they had designated for the Sioux. Well, this shit wasn't going to fly with Crazy Horse. On 25 June 1876, nearly 10 years later, General Custer's men approached what appeared to be a large encampment of Sioux warriors. In the face of the enemy, Custer divided his 7th Cavalry into 3 separate detachments. Dumb move! The second group was to cut off their escape route, and the third was personally led by Custer himself, and was to sweep in from the flank and ultimately crush the Sioux forces. The first group attacked the Sioux encampment to draw them out, but they quickly realized that they were in over their heads when Crazy Horse and about 2,000 screaming Sioux warriors started charging at them on horseback with bows and knives. And, Winchester repeating, pound you in the ass rifles! Who knew? The unit's commander, Major Marcus Reno, quickly realized he was about to be in the getting fucked up the ass by Indians business. And he decided to run like a bitch and take up a fortified defensive position on a nearby ridge. The majority of the Sioux warriors did not pursue him because they're not dumb. Right about this time, Custer's group decided to launch their flanking assault. When they rode around the ridge expecting to see an Indian force doing battle with Major Reno's men, they were a little surprised to find out that the 2,000 warriors who had just gotten done beating the shit out of Reno were now headed toward their position. Surprise, motherfucker! Custer and his men tried to ford the Little Bighorn River, but their attempts were unsuccessful, and Custer, well, he quickly found himself bearing the brunt of a fierce counterattack. While his men attempted to fortify their position, Crazy Horse and his warriors circled around and completely enveloped what was left of the 7th Cavalry. Surrounded and assaulted on all sides, Custer made his last stand, and his unit was slaughtered to the last man. Crazy Horse would eventually surrender, the last of his tribe to do so. He'd be outright killed while in custody of the federal government, but the circumstances are so shady that, well, let's just say it, they fucking murdered him. The two most devastating defeats the United States forces would suffer in the Indian Wars came by his hand. In mere hours, an entire detachment of professional cavalrymen was utterly annihilated. The legacy of these natives in the cavalry is one of respect. At the time, there was a generally racist component to this dark and ugly chapter in American history. Today, we acknowledge that these were true Americans fighting for their land and their way of life. And for that, we salute Crazy Horse, his tribe, and all his warriors. Until the next time, if you're on the receiving end of a Sioux attack, run like a bitch or get a rusty haircut. Sleep tight and stack bodies.